The Vancouver Canucks have a huge decision to make heading into July 1st, with wild reports revealing multiple teams are calling on star Elias Pettersson, which leaves a big question mark surrounding the Vancouver Canucks star forward. But not only that, with the Abbotsford Canucks winning the Calder Cup, this one player is bound to make the Canucks roster next year, and it has huge implications on the future of the team. We're going to break down everything, including the reports on Elias Pettersson and a quote from him himself going into next year. And there's one player from Abbotsford that is ready to shine later on this episode. Before we get into that, if you're part of the 65% watching this and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, it's completely free to hit it. It helps us out a ton. And this is the busiest time of year. You're not going to want to miss any of this content. There's no better home than Canucks Digest. So go down and hit that free subscribe button. But with that, let's just hop straight into Abbotsford today and this prospect. But last night, we've seen the Abby Canucks win the Calder Cup, the first in franchise history, breaking the Vancouver curse. And every single player on this roster in the lineup that contributes throughout this season were a huge impact on their success. Griffin did a full video on that yesterday. You're going to want to go check that out. But there was one player in particular, and no, it's not the Artie Party, because we already know how good he is and his impact moving forward with the Canucks. But Linus Karlsson is a very interesting name to watch. We've seen him score the game-winning goal last night versus the Checkers to secure the Calder Cup, and his run has been incredible. Looking at Karlsson, we've seen during the playoffs 14 goals, 12 assists for 26 points, 25 years old. He had a stretch with the Canucks this year, putting up 6 points in 23 games. Karlsson is on the voyage, a center winger that can come up and make an immediate impact on this Canucks team as early as next season. Looking at the run he just had, leading the entire AHL Calder Cup playoffs in total points, 14 goals, which was also the league leading. Karlsson was a huge reason, the working motor, including Baines and Blade, who are guys that could make this roster as well. But this Canucks team, this Abbotsford team, really showed that the Canucks might not be ranked the highest when it comes to prospects, but they have a lot of players on the verge and ready to jump into the bottom 6 or bottom 9 of a team. And I think this guy, Karlsson himself, is poised to make that jump as early as next season and could be a very good replacement player to put in this bottom 6 if they lose out on Suter. And listen, I want Suter back, but I do think Karlsson has a big impact. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Abby winning? What is your thoughts on Artur Shilovs and his historic run? And what is your thoughts on some key players that could make the jump? Because in my opinion, Karlsson is almost dead set in my eyes to make this Canucks team out of camp after how good of a year this kid had. But with that, let's hop straight into the second topic. And we know there's a lot flying around on star forward Elias Pettersson. A lot of you guys aren't going to like me saying star player, but listen to all these reports. The first one coming from Chris Johnson on TSN 1050. All this will be linked down below as well if you wanted to read through all the articles as well. But he says there are whispers that teams are trying to get Elias Pettersson before his no movement clause kicks in on July 1st. At this point, I don't think it's going to happen, but that's not to say it can't. Now, we've seen the reports that have been circulating Pettersson as early as the start of last season before JT Miller was moved. We've seen a lot of fans call for PD to be moved down. We've seen reports that Buffalo was actively trying to get him. We have reports that Colorado was a team looking at Pettersson, but it does seem like teams are actively calling in, trying to make this deal work out before we see this no movement clause kick in, where Pettersson decides his entire future and this contract when July 1st rolls around. Now, looking at Pettersson's contract, we know July 1st, this kicks in. This no movement clause extends completely through the rest of his contract, going all the way to 2032. So the Vancouver Canucks are not happy. They want to move on from their young player. They would have to make this happen unless he wanted to go in and dictate the future. He could look and you could have a trade ready to go. He could look at the Canucks management and say, hey, I don't want to go here. I want to stay in Vancouver. That trade gets vetoed and you're stuck with Pettersson. Listen, there is some hindsight when looking at this that this might be a blessing in disguise not moving on from him when we get to his quotes. But we do get quotes. Pierre LeBrun, we've seen this from just a couple of days. Their trade rumors won't go away until it passes July 1st. But regarding Elias Pettersson, it's still my understanding the Canucks don't plan on trading him, or at least that was the case as of Monday. Now, this quote did come out yesterday, where we did see that this was as of Monday. They don't want to move on from Pettersson. This could change. They could get an offer. You could get Peterka, Bowen Byram, Alex Tuch, and 4 first-round picks, and you're going to have to say yes to an offer like this. But the big thing with Pettersson, when looking at him, is if you're moving on from him, there's one key position the Canucks are already very weak at, not only in the NHL. You have some great players in Hedl and Teddy Blueger, but you need a second-line center or someone that can step up and take over the number 1 center position if Pettersson's moved. Now, looking at Pettersson, we know we want him back to form. 102 points. Maybe go get Kuzmenko again. He is a free agent, but we know Pettersson can be productive. 102 points just 2 seasons ago. He dipped down to 89 last year, followed it up with 45 points. Pettersson was someone that looked like that could go out and be over a point per game. Then he comes in almost at half a point per game, and it left a quite sour taste in fans' mouths. And I agree, he needs to step up. We've seen a quote from Pettersson, which we will get into very shortly. I thought it was this screenshot, but looking at the center depth, if you move on from Pettersson, we know, as I said, Hedl, Teddy Blueger, Niels Amon, or you can work your way down to Aatu Ratu. But looking at the depth chart of centers on this Canucks team, Pius Suter, who's 3rd on this list, is set to hit the free agency or come back. Linus Karlsson's more of a winger, but can come in as a center. Aatu Ratu, Max Sath, and Nathan Smith, you can work your way down. There's not a lot of guys ready to take that jump or are ready at all to take that jump into a number 1 role. You're looking for a second-line center, moving out Pettersson to bring in a guy that is not a center, just leaves you with a gaping hole, and in my opinion, would be the worst center core in the National Hockey League. Not to hate anyone on this list, because I do think Hedl can step in. I do think Blueger is a great 3rd-line center, but the problem with that is trying to fill the void of this team. Now, going into available free agents, we know there's not a huge list of guys or players that make sense, especially if you're moving on from Pettersson. With this, John Tavares does seem set to go back to the Leafs, even though there's a lot of contract negotiations happening there. Claude Giroux with Ottawa. Granlund would be a great second-line center. Once again, cannot step into the number 1 role. Dvorak, Sam Bennett would be awesome, but once again, probably outpriced going to Florida. There's so many guys here that, yes, sure, bring him in on second-line duty, but not a first-line center. And that's where the Canucks are in an interesting situation where you're trying to get him back into shape, getting him ready to get to the season. We've seen Pettersson in an interview with the Swiss article. He said there was very few minor setbacks during the season, but everything has healed now and it's full steam ahead into the gym. Everything is pointing towards a resurgence here, a bounce back here. This is what we're praying for, at least. But with these reports flying around, with teams pressuring the Canucks to move them before July 1st, with Pierre LeBrun going out to say, as of Monday, they want to keep him, or it seems like they want to, they have one of the biggest and a franchise-altering decision to make before the 1st of July, coming up very soon, just a week away, or under a week by the time you're watching this probably. The Canucks need to figure out what they're doing. If you move Pettersson, you get in other pieces. Yes, you can get fresh faces, but I do think this makes the Canucks team even worse than we currently see. And I'm not saying they're bad going into next year, but moving on from someone that was a Selke candidate, someone that has went out and put up 100 points, would be a massive decision and a bad one, in my opinion. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on the Abbotsford win? Because this is outstanding. Who really cares about the Canucks at the very moment? Because Abby are champions. The Vancouver curse is broken. What's your thoughts on Karlsson? What is your thoughts on the reports coming out on Pettersson? There's a lot to take in. There's a lot coming out, so you're not going to want to miss it. So while you're down leaving a comment, go hit that subscribe button too. If you made it this far, obviously you enjoyed it, or you hate me enough to hit the button. Either way, go down and hit it. That'd be it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, as I said, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be here with content all summer long, and you're not going to want to miss it. But I've been your host, Mark Bahai, and take care, Canucks fans.